Hari Om. Let's start with the prayer. Om Samasta Jana Kalyani Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidvaram Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanura Mardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidya Dravidam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Gurudeva Deva. We are now doing the 7th chapter of Panchadashi, and it is Trupti Deepa Prakaranam, and essentially talks about the contentment of a Jivan Mukta. Once I realize that Aham Brahmasmi, there is nothing much I need because I am the total. So therefore, Prajahati Yada Kaman Sarvan Partha Manogatan Atmanyeva Atmanatushtaha. So he is reveling in himself by himself, as Krishna says, because there is nothing other than himself that he wants. Therefore, there is no more desire for any other objects. But doesn't mean that he avoids any objects. It comes, it's okay. It doesn't come also, it's okay. He doesn't depend on the objects per se. That's essentially what should be applied. And in this, several questions were raised in terms of the objections. It says, who is realizing here what? So there are, in the Purusha, analysis of the Purusha, which is essentially explanation of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad statement, Atmanam Ched Vijaniyad Ayam Asmi iti Purushaha Kimichan Kasya Kamaya Sriram Anusanjaret. So this comes from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad in the 4th chapter, the 4th Brahmana, and the 12th mantra. And then Atmanam Ched Vijaniyad, one should know oneself. So I am Asmiti, Purusha, the one who is the Jiva, has to know that I am the Atma, or he has to know his self, and recognition that I am Asmiti. Asmiti means I am existent, and therefore I am conscious entity. I am there as I am, which is essentially without any further qualification. And Kimichan, so once you know that the self that I am, Kimichan Kasya Kamaya Sariram Anusanjared. So what is there for him to know anymore or desire for any objects? Kimichan Kasya Kamaya, any other desire will not be there because he is full by himself. That Atma that he knows is obviously has to be full or complete, Purnam, and that means it has to be Brahman. Brahman means infiniteness. So there is nothing other than himself. So Sarvabhutastam Atmanam, Sarvabhutani Chamatmani. One who sees himself as the self in himself, as the self in all, and therefore, and also not only in other beings, but in everything also, because Aitadatma Midagum Sarvam Tat Satyam Sa Atma. So that Atma is Aitadatma Midagum Sarvam Tat Satyam. That essentially in this Advidya says you are the essence of every objects also, the whole world also, and that's what Uddalaka points out in the Chandogya Upanishad. And then only says Sa Atma Tattvamasi, you are that Atma, and that is that you are. And the statement Tattvamasi comes after the statement Aitadatma Vidagum Sarvam Tat Satyam Sa Atma. And that Atma has to be this Vijaniyat, should be known, and that I am Atma Purushaha. So Atma is, I am the total. Then who am I right now? In the hierarchy of the Paramarthika Satyam and Vyavaharika Satyam, and there is a true difference in terms of the nature of the Satyam. So both are Satyam, but one is the more real Satyam, another is Mithya Satyam. It appears to be there, it's not really there. It appears to be there, for it is experience. Since it is experience and therefore it appears to be there, at the same time it's not absolutely real because it's continuously changing. And therefore it is called the Sadasat Vilakshanam. Michya is Sat Asat Vilakshanam. It's different from Sat and different from Asat. It's not Sat because it is changing. So for us, the changing things cannot come under absolutely real. It's only relatively real. Relative real is not absolute real. Absolute real is that which changeless entity. That alone is real. And one that doesn't changeless, it only has to be infinite, because any finite things undergoes change. So infiniteness is nothing but Brahman. So Brahman alone is Satyam, and Brahman alone is Nityam, because it doesn't undergo any change. And so that Atmanam Vijaniyat, one has to know yourself. But what's the point in knowing yourself unless that self that I am knowing is itself is the totality? Aham Brahmasmi has to be the knowledge. So Purusha is being analyzed in these slokas up to the 17th sloka, and up to this, what is a Purusha? Purusha involves is the pure consciousness, which is Brahman, which is Ekameva Advitiyam. There is no duality whatsoever. So from that point, there is no creation also. So creation comes into picture because I am seeing creation. So question is being raised by a Purusha. Jiva is asking a question. So Jiva is already crystallized, and how did he come into picture? So he says, how did this universe came picture? Where did I come from and where am I living? Because I am entering into this world and I am living one day. So question is being raised by the Purusha. So to him only the teaching, not for the pure consciousness. So the question is, who is the Purusha as being addressed? So in principle, the whole analysis is trying to find out who am I essentially, and that's essentially is being discussed in these chapters. It says there is a Jiva and Ishvara Srushti, and Ishvara is the reflection of pure consciousness in the Sattva Pradhana Maya, or the pure consciousness in the Sattva Guna only is the reflection of the Ishvara. So Ishvara is nothing but a pratibimba, a reflection of pure Brahman in the Maya, but in the Maya which is Suddha Sattvam. Sattvam stands for knowledge. Therefore, Suddha Sattvam is pure knowledge. That means the Ishvara is Sarvajnaha and Sarvavit. Sarvajnaha means he knows himself that I am Brahmasmi. So he has a Paravidya, and also he knows the universe also, since he is creating, and creator should have the knowledge of creation. I cannot create something which I don't know. So if Ishvara is going to create the whole universe, so he should have the know-how of how to create. Therefore he is Sarvajnaha and also Sarvavid. He has a Aparavidya also. So that's why Bhagavan Ramanuja also says he is Ananta Kalyana Gunashrayam. He is the infinite auspicious qualities, because auspicious qualities belong to the pure Sattva Guna only, and therefore he is a Suddha Sattvam. Therefore, from the Ishvara point, he is a creator of the entire 14 worlds, and until Anupravesa statement, Ishvara creation is there. Jiva is also creating. Without the help of Jiva, Ishvara cannot create. Without the Ishvara, Jiva cannot create. So creation occurs by both Ishvara and Jiva. What's the Jiva's contribution? He contributes his karma. Karma means because of his vasanas only Ishvara is creating. So samishti karma, samishti vasanas of all jivas put together is the driving force for the creation, and that driving force is called Maya. Maya is called the Ishvara Shakti. So that Shakti is essentially the power where one becoming into many. So using the Shakti, he himself became many. So that becoming many is due to change of state, and therefore there is a driving force for the change of state. From the physics also, when there is a change of state, there has to be a driving force. I don't see driving force. I cannot see Maya. So question is, where is Maya? We don't see any Maya. says, you don't see it because Maya is a force. Force you don't see. If an object moves from one place to other place, I say there is a force that contributed it, but I don't see it. The very fact that there is a change of state involves there is a presence of the force that contributed to the change of state. Here change of state is one becoming into many. Says Tadaikshada Bahusyam Praja Eti. It saw what? There is nothing to see other than itself. That means it's a conscious entity, it's a self-conscious entity, self-revealing entity, and it saw and it wanted to become many. Bahusyam. That means I want to become many. And Praja Eti, it became into many. So it itself became many. So where should I see Isvara? Isvara is not somewhere now. Isvara is everything that you see is nothing but, he says, it became many. Became means it is already transformed into many. So now it exists in different forms as the pure existent, and in the form of, where there is subtle body, also in the form of conscious entity. So conscious entity, Sat part, Chit part and Ananda part of the Maya aspect becomes evident. Depending upon the reflecting medium, reflection occurs. And therefore, Purusha is also reflecting medium, and the reflecting medium is Sattva Guna with impurities of Rajoguna and Tamoguna. So depending upon the degrees of Sattva, Rajo, Tamogunas in the Buddhi, the reflection occurs. And that reflection is from the pure consciousness is getting reflected, and because of its consciousness is getting reflected, the reflecting medium also as though appears to be conscious entity. So Buddhi appears to be conscious entity. So when I say I am a conscious entity, who is saying? Buddhi is saying, and Buddhi is borrowed consciousness, just as the moon is also luminous entity, but luminosity doesn't belong to the moon, but it is a borrowed luminosity by reflecting the sunlight that is all pervading there. So that part of the sunlight that falls on the moon is what we call a Sakshi. That part of the consciousness that is as though illumining the local mind is called Sakshi or Kutastha Chaitanyam. So these words are used in the Vedanta. Sakshi means witnessing consciousness. What is witnessing consciousness? Witnessing consciousness is nothing but pure consciousness, but that part of pure consciousness that is falling on the local equipment Buddhi is what is called Sakshi. So also called Kutastha Chaitanyam. Kutastha means that which is unwell, does not undergo any change. So that which changeless entity, that change is the Kutastha Chaitanyam. Once it falls on the Buddhi, it gets reflected because the Buddhi has the capacity to reflect. It's called subtle body. So Buddhi can reflect because that is the nature of the Buddhi. So wherever there is a subtle body, there is a reflection that occurs and called Chidabhasa. And by reflecting the consciousness, the Buddhi also become a conscious entity, just as by reflecting sunlight, moon is also becoming a luminous entity. So Buddhi now is becoming a Chidabhasa and reflection, and the medium Buddhi is called reflecting medium, and the original light that is falling on that called Sakshi or Kutastha Chaitanya. So there are three components in a Purusha, in the Jiva. One is pure consciousness, and that part that is falling on that we call it Kutastha Chaitanyam or Sakshi Chaitanyam. The one that is the Buddhi, that is in the inert entity, that is subtle body and that is subtle material, and that is called Buddhi, and that is the inert by itself is not conscious. But by the consciousness falling on the Buddhi, Buddhi is reflecting, and that's called Chidabhasa. So whenever I say I am identifying only with the Buddhi, therefore I am this. So the question that is posing is, who realizes this? In these three components, there is a pure consciousness, the Kutastha Chaitanyam, there is a Buddhi that is inert, and there is a Chidabhasa. Who realizes what? Was the question. Because pure consciousness doesn't have to realize. Because all the time pure it is all pervading and infinite, so it doesn't have to realize. So realization is not for the Brahman. Don't ask the Brahman has to realize. Brahman doesn't have to realize. It is Ekameva Advitiyam Brahma. And the Buddhi cannot realize. Why cannot realize? Because Buddhi is inert. So inert thing cannot do any realization. It doesn't know that it is even inert. So that's the nature of inertness. But Buddhi has become a conscious entity by reflection. That's called Chidabhasa. Now, is a Buddhi with Chidabhasa is the one that has to realize? Buddhi with Chidabhasa cannot realize anything. Realize what? I am Brahman. How can it be Brahman? So it cannot be Brahman. It can only say, I am getting reflected by the pure Brahman. That's all it can realize. So who realizes what? Is the question that was posed. And this is, the question itself is valid only up to a point, because it is pure consciousness as though appear to be localized consciousness, and I have to realize that I am pure consciousness. So first answer is, who realizes? The one who doesn't know that I am Brahman has to realize. So a Purusha who has no knowledge that I am Brahmasmi has to realize, because he doesn't know. Now what does he will know? He will know that I am pure consciousness, and I was pure consciousness, I am pure consciousness, and I shall be pure consciousness. That should be the realization. So realization is not doing something, but recognition of my true nature. And that has to be done using Chidabhasa, using the mind only, because pure consciousness doesn't have any instrument to know anything. It doesn't need to know anything also. So it is Chidabhasa with the Buddhi has to recognize that I am the consciousness that is being shown by the Buddhi is due to the original consciousness, and I am that original consciousness has to be recognized, and the recognition has to occur in the Buddhi, because the confusion is in the Buddhi only. So all that has been analyzed systematically, and that's what essentially has been discussed up to sloka 17, and this has been summarized in the sloka 18 that we read now. Tasmadabhasa purushaha tasmadabhasa purushaha sakutasto takutasto vivicyatam sakutasto vivicyatam kutastosmiti vijñātam kutastosmiti vijñātam arhatityabhyudat srutihi arhatityabhyudat srutihi tasmat abhasa purushaha. So therefore tasmat, therefore Vidyaranya is making a conclusive statement. Therefore, abhasa purushaha. So Chidabhasa purushaha. That means the reflected consciousness with the reflecting medium, because without the reflecting medium, reflection cannot occur. Reflection cannot occur without the original consciousness. So all the three components are involved in this statement here. So abhasa purushaha, so sakutastaha, along with the kutastaha. So therefore we have three components together, where the Buddhi, the reflecting medium RM, and the reflecting consciousness, that is the RC, and that is Chidabhasa, and the original consciousness that is getting reflected, that is Kutastham. Therefore all three components, that is Abhasa Purushaha Kutasthaha. So therefore the reflected consciousness and along with the original consciousness, Vivicyatam, by using a discrimination. So who has to use discrimination? This is to be done by the Buddhi, because Buddhi is the one that is Nischayatmikam, and that is the one that discriminates what is right and what is wrong, what is real and what is not real. So Buddhi is involved in the realization process. It's not going beyond the Buddhi or beyond the mind and all that. Has to be clear here. Buddhi, the intellect, is required, but intellect in terms of what? That in order to differentiate in the or distinguish what is nitya, what is anitya. That's called vivekam. Vivechatam is using a viveka, using a discrimination. Therefore, viveka becomes a primary qualification for Purusha, for Jiva to realize. That's what Advaita says. Therefore, you need a Viveka, Vairagya, Samadhi, Shatka Sampatti and Mumutshutvam. So, Viveka comes first, and Viveka is Nitya, Anitya Vastu Viveka. What is real and what is changing? What is real? The Kutastha Chaitanyam is always real, irrespective of whether there is a reflecting medium or not. Why? Because it is infinite. Because infinite is always nityam, it cannot undergo modification. Modification is required as a part of changing, that means it's a temporarily. Previous state is gone, new state has come. So previous state is temporary compared to the new state, and that's called agama paino anityaha. So that is the changing things cannot be kutastham. So we have that discrimination has to be used for differentiating what is real part, what is unreal part. Because these two are together all the time. When I say ahankara, ego is nothing but I am this. So I am this is always together, and I cannot separate this, physically separate it, because the mixture is two, just like gold and ring. Gold and ring cannot be separated. If I remove the gold, there is no ring at all. So ring can only exist when there is a gold there. So using the gold and the ring, I have to use a discrimination, viveka, to distinguish these two. One is the gold, another is the ring. What is the two things here? Because one is more permanent, another is temporary. One is adhishthanam, and that is supporting, another is adhyasa, superimposition. Superimpose, what is superimposed there? It's not like putting on top of it, superimpose. It is cognitively they are superimposed, because when I say it is a ring, it's a name and a form, nama and a rupa. Name is naming, naming involves knowing. Therefore, I have the knowledge of what it is. When I say it is a ring is a name given for a form. Who gave the name for the form? That involves obviously a knowledge. So therefore, Kutastham is required, a knowledge of that is required in order to name it. So obviously, Nama, Rupa, a Chaitanya Vastu, a conscious entity has to be behind it in order to name and form. So that's how the Upanishad says, universe is nothing but Nama, Rupa. Nama comes first and Rupa comes next. Nama involves knowing. Knowing involves a conscious entity. Therefore, consciousness comes first before the creation. That is the Vedantic creation. Whereas the materialists say we have a matter coming first and matter big bang, and how did consciousness come? They have no way of knowing it other than saying statement, somehow, some accidentally, some proper combination of materials joined together, and that's how consciousness came into picture. So this is all from the matter consciousness coming. From the matter consciousness cannot come, only because matter is inert, conscious is consciousness. So the consciousness cannot come from matter. Can the matter come from the consciousness entity? Vedanta is saying that there was only consciousness and all the matter came from that. Is it possible? It's also not really possible. There cannot be unconscious entity coming from the conscious entity. Then whole creation is, you say, the whole world is Jagat is nothing but creation from the pure Brahman, and pure Brahman became many, and when you become pure Brahman is nothing but Prajnanam Brahma, consciousness is Brahman. How can it become many? And in that many all are the unconscious entities are there. So how come unconscious entities came from Brahman? So only way is what is only appearance only, and appearance can be there but really cannot come. Therefore really consciousness cannot become inert material but appears to be just like in the dream. Just like in the dream, where I am going into the bed, I am sitting comfortably in the AC room with all the lights off and going in a Dunlop bed. I am comfortably sleeping there, and when I dream, I may be dreaming a forest with the sun and the moon and everything else running in the waters, hills and valleys. So where did the matter come from? Inert matter is coming there. The forest is there. How did I create the forest in my dream? For a dreamer, dream is not a dream as long as he is in the dream. So for him, that is real. So a Jiva inside the creation feels that there is really a matter separate from him. There is an inert matter and there is a conscious matter. In my dream, I can feel there is a plants, there is animals, there is a human beings, all that I can dream. So varieties of the nature of the beings are there with the conscious entities. And also I am seeing the matter, forest, hills and ground and everything, Akasha, Vayu, Agni, Apaha, Prithvi, all those things are there, and those things are also, matter is also there. So for a dreamer, he thinks it is real, but when he is awaking, there is no forest, there is no beings, and all that is only appearance only. As long as the appearance is taken as a real, it has become a real. That's what is the whole thing. Therefore, from consciousness, there cannot be creation of unconscious. But there can be apparent consciousness, apparent material creation as in the dream. That's why Vedanta uses the dream example to illustrate that the creation is also similar. So the pure consciousness and the unconscious entities that I am seeing, so I am this. So I am existent conscious entity, this objectifiable entity is inert entity. Now I had to use a viveka, the Purusha has to viveka, that's what it is, that the first statement of the Upanishad, Atmanam te vijaniyat, one has to know, should know. How do I know? By using viveka, by using discrimination, I have to separate I am this, I have to separate I am part and this part. I cannot really separate physically, so conceptually, cognitively, using the buddhi, I had to separate. That discrimination has to be done, and therefore he says vivicha, that means using proper discrimination, I have to separate the kutastha chaitanyam, claim that I am the kutastha chaitanyam, because I say I am. I am means I am a conscious entity and an existent entity. Any this is not me, because any this is an object, an inert entity. I claim that I am this right now, but I am not this. I have to claim I am, and that essentially tasmat chidabhasa purusha sakutasto vivicchatam. So I had to use the discriminative faculty to distinguish these two together, and there has to be used by sukshma buddhi, by subtle intellect is required, because I am trying to separate that which is inseparable. I am this cannot be separate, because the very instrument trying to analyze required has that one. So I cannot really separate it, but cognitively I can separate and recognize myself. I am this and not this, and to say that I am this, I need this also. I had to use the buddhi to claim that I am pure consciousness. So using the buddhi, I had to say I am not the buddhi, but I am the pure consciousness that enlivens the buddhi. And that enlivening factor, looking at the enlivening factor, I had to recognize, it's called essentially upahita chaitanyam, upadhisahita chaitanyam. With the mind, with the intellect, I have to recognize I am not the mind, I am not the intellect, but that I am pure consciousness, that which enlivens the mind. I am able to talk, I am able to use even the viveka discrimination because of the consciousness. That has to be understood. So tasmat abhasa purushaha sakutastaha vivicchatam. So along with the pure consciousness sakutastaha, and Tasmad Abhasa Purusha, this reflected consciousness, Abhasa Purusha, and reflected consciousness cannot be there without reflecting medium. So reflecting medium is also coming into picture. So we have RM, reflecting medium, RC, reflecting consciousness, and the original consciousness. All three together is the one that is essentially has to be present, and I have to use the discrimination in these three, that I am pure Kutastha and not Chidabhasa, and the reflecting medium also. All that has to be. So Kutastosmi iti Vijñātum. So Asmi iti, this I am is Kutastha. Vijñātum has to be known, and Vijñātum Arhati iti Abhyudat Shrutihi. So see, Vijñātam Arhati, this to be understood, and it is Shruti Abhyudat. This is the meaning of this Shruti statements. So what is Shruti? The Vedanta points out that you are pure consciousness, and that pure consciousness that pervades everything, and including the Buddhi in the form of pure existence, and in the form of subtle material, as the form of reflection, and in the form of Ananda, when it is Santam, the reflecting medium is serene. So I am pure Sachidananda, and depending upon the reflecting media, I express myself as the existence in the inert things, existence and conscious entities in the subtle material, and existence and consciousness and Ananda when that Buddhi becomes serene or peaceful, and that is essentially what is being discussed. So Tasmat Vijñātum Arhati, that has to be understood. So what is the explanation of the first mantra of the mantra of the Vidyaranya? Atmanam Sid Vijaniyat Ayam Asmi iti Purushaha. Ayam Asmi iti Purushaha Atman. I should know that I am the Atma. What is Atma? It is essentially Kutastha Chaitanyam, and that is that which is unchanging, changeless entity. That is called Pratyabhijna. Pratyabhijna means I am that which is unchanging. So when we say what is changing and what is unchanging, when we say I am, I said when I was a child, but the body, mind, intellect was different at that time. Therefore, the reflection also changing depending upon the body, mind, intellect. What I knew at that time is different from what I knew now, and what all the desires I have, the vasanas I have are different now, and all my likes and dislikes. I used to like marbles and all that, but now I like bigger toys and better toys. So what I likes are different. So the mind is different, the intellect is different, the body obviously changing. But what is not changing is I am the same body when the body, mind, intellect when I was a child. I am the same one when the body changed into an adulthood. I claim myself I am, because I can recollect what my childhood experiences also, because the experiencer and the recollector is the law of memory has to be same. Therefore I remember. So I am, I was that, I am now, and I will be. I am not changing, but the only thing that is changing is what I identify myself with. I am identifying with the body, with the mind and intellect. That's what Krishna calls it, Kshetram, the field of our experience. And starting with Idam Shariram Kaunteya Kshetramichabhidiyate. So this is what is the Kshetram. And Kshetrajnaha, the one who knows the Kshetram, knower of Kshetram is Kshetrajnaha. Kshetrajnam chapimam viddhi sarvakshetreshu bharata. So Kshetrajnam is essentially Kutastha Chaitanyam reflected in the Kshetram. And that Kutastha Chaitanyam at the local level is Kshetrajnam chapimam viddhi sarvakshetreshu. In all Kshetras, I am the one which is getting reflected. That is a statement of Krishna. Now we can see how the OC, from the OC point, Krishna is claiming, I am that pervades in all. So that which is essentially Kshetrajnam chapimam viddhi sarvakshetreshu. In all Kshetras, in all the reflecting things, I am the one that is original light that is getting reflected. And that's what is the Krishna. So who is the knower? There is always a question, who is a knower? Whom should I say knower? He says, the figuratively says it is the Kutastha Chaitanyam, because without that there cannot be any knowledge, because it is the nature of consciousness. For me, knowledge is nothing but I am conscious of this. That means I know this. So being conscious of something, I should be conscious entity. The conscious entity alone is the one that can be knower. Who is the original consciousness? Therefore, Kutastha Chaitanyam. So first answer is, who is a knower? It is the Kutastha Chaitanyam. But at the same time, from the Kutastha Chaitanyam, there is no knowing and nothing else. Because there is no instrument to know even, because it's all pervading consciousness. And therefore, from its point, from its reference, that is from the Paramarthika point, there is no knowing also. So who is the knower? Even though figuratively we say that Kutastha Chaitanyam is the knower, is a conscious entity, it is the buddhi that has instrument is required. Buddhi itself cannot know. Buddhi can know only by reflection consciousness, because by activated by the pure consciousness. So the knower is the buddhi with the reflecting consciousness, but they themselves cannot know without the support of the OC, original consciousness. So even though we cannot say the Chidabhasa or the reflecting consciousness and the buddhi are knowers, it's only for the time being we say it is. The truth is it's the original consciousness. We cannot say original consciousness is knower. It's only figuratively original consciousness. Original consciousness with the package is a knower for, because knowing is only a vritti jnanam, is only through the thought process. Therefore, that can occur only in the buddhi. So all that is implied, because when you ask questions, people ask questions from the point of buddhi or from the point of Chidabhasa, and at the same time from the point of Kutastha Chaitanyam. So who is the knower, who is the realizer, who has to meditate, all that gets confused unless we don't switch the reference states, and that has to be very clear here. It is Kutastosmiti Vijñātum Arhati. So Vijñātum Arhati can be known by Shrutihi Abhyudat. This is essentially the statement. It is Shrutihi Abhyudat. This is the meaning of this Shruti statement. Shruti here is the Brihadaranyaka Shruti statement of what is a Purusha and what is the Atmanam Ched Vijaneyat. Atmanam Ched Vijaneyat, that has to be known, and this is what to be known. Now the question that we can ask is Vedanta is the only means of knowledge? What about the other scriptures? We say that any scripture, be very careful, says we say any scripture becomes a pramana provided it tells you this. What? There is only pure consciousness, there is the Kutastha Chaitanyam, there is a Chidabhasa, there is a buddhi, and I am the Kutastha. If it can tell that, then that is a Shrut, that is a valid pramana. So valid pramana is that which tells me that I am pure consciousness, and in enlivening this body, mind, intellect, and making it as though active entity. So if any scripture says that, we accept the scriptures as a pramana. But no other scripture says that other than Vedanta. Therefore Vedanta becomes a pramana. So this is the statement that has to be known, because this is called Apaurushaya statement. It is not by the discovered by somebody. It is essentially truth that is passed on from generation to generation, all the way from the Lord. Therefore we call it is Apaurushayam, and this knowledge cannot be logically deduced, cannot be, even though it's logical, but cannot be logically deduced, because for logic to work there is a pratyaksha pramana has to support, and it's not something that you can say in order to support, because our logic is based on the Vyapti Jnanam. That means a relation can only be established by some evidence. Of course, all the science is also is essentially involves, they want a evidence. Evidence means pratyaksha pramanam. Data is somebody has to observe, that is pratyaksha pramanam. And the data is used to interpret, and that's what is essentially Shastra is. But for that, the validity of the science depends upon the data. without the data, you can have many theories. He says, support me, show me the data in order to support your theory. So without the data, the theory cannot be supported. The same way, for the Shastra, you cannot have logic in order to separate it. Therefore it's not logically can be deduced. Hence the scripture itself says, Naisha tarkena matirapaneya. Therefore it cannot be deduced by the logic itself. Is there a heaven? Is there a hell? You cannot logically say it. It's not by direct perception, nor logic, nor anumana, all that. Only Shastra becomes, scripture becomes Shastra, scripture becomes a means for us to know. Therefore, it is the Vijñātum Arhati, it is to be known, and that is essentially what Shruti Abhyudat. So it has to be, is what essentially revealed by the Shruti. Shruti is Vedanta, and this is what talking about the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad statement, which is a Shruti. And we mentioned that any statement that any statement, any Shruti, any scripture can be a pramana, provided it tells you that Brahma Satyam, Jagan Mithya, Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. If that is says, then we accept that. And we accept any statements as long as it is valid within this. If not, then we cannot say that is the proper pramana. This will stop. Now he is in the next few slokas, he has completed the analysis of Purushaha. So he is going to take now what is the I am. I am is that it is used in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad sloka. Atmanam ched vijaniya I am asmi iti Purushaha. I am means this. This is obviously an object. I cannot say I am this. So this being used, so he is going to talk about what is the meaning of this, and so on and so forth. With this we stop here, and we will continue in the next talk. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.